Good morning, everyone. Welcome to American Scousers morning coffee or tea with American Scouser on a Monday morning, where I pretty much literally just woke up because I had set the alarm. I woke up, but then I woke up again. Actually, let me rephrase that. Angie barged in the room and said, "Hey, do you know what time it is?" Kind of a deal. So I was woken up. Let's go with that. Thank God. Otherwise, I would have missed it completely. Grumpy is here. He's grumpy because I woke up late. Aside from that, he can't find any reasons to be grumpy, to be honest with you. This neck pain, maybe, but once this pill kicks in, hopefully that will help. But Mateusz, the prince, is in the house. And Alan is in the house. What's going on, Prince?
I was afraid I was going to have to fly solo for a little bit, but then I thought, you know what? I've done much worse on these shows before. It probably won't be that bad. So all is well. Not much to be grumpy about either. Just another Monday.
Yeah, I mean, when you set the bar low, it's very easy to jump over it. No, you've done solo before, right? Have you never done solo before?
Not an entire. Well, maybe one show. I know there have been moments where I've been solo for a little bit, but not for an extended amount of time.
I gotcha.
That's a bad thing to trust.
We'll set that up and see how that goes. It's an experiment. We'll set that up. Otherwise, yeah, I mean, overall, we get the game on Thursday, which was pretty darn good. So we'll talk a lot about that, obviously, and then today's game. And then on Saturday, I mean, it was a great sports weekend. Fenerbahce beats Galatasaray in the Super Cup with Guendouzi scoring the winning, the first goal. It was literally right after he landed, he got on the pitch, it felt like. And then yesterday, in an unbelievable fashion, 49ers win again. So you can't really ask for more out of a sporting weekend. What was that?
You just skipped over the Bears.
Because I
couldn't
care less about the Bears. I can't stand the Bears, to be honest.
Hey, you know what? Both a couple hours from
Chicago is because everybody pops out of the corner when they're doing well, and you never hear from them. Or Bears fans read the social media in the first half about the Bears. This is why they'll never win anything, blah, blah, blah. And then this guy is not the right quarterback. And then in the second half, afterwards, all those people who were complaining in my freaking thing, posting all these pictures and celebrating and stuff like that. So
I feel like that's so many fan bases, though. I think to credit to Bears fans, because they're usually so bad, they still make themselves known. It's not like they're, I don't know, Patriots fans. Patriots fans disappeared for years after Brady. Right? You did not come across a single Patriots fan. I'm not counting Gally. He doesn't count. So, and then all of a sudden,
he's a Giants fan, by the way.
That's why I'm not counting him. Anyway.
Nicely done. Nicely done.
No, but yeah, great sports weekend overall. And I mean, if you're into college football at all, for anyone watching, I think the Indiana story is really cool. The worst college football program of all time, historically bad year in and year out, and to watch how they're dominating the entire country is pretty cool. So that's it. I think it's just been fun.
I can't find anybody to really root for. I realize everybody says Indiana story and stuff, some people are basically after the, I don't know if it would be considered the Cinderella story when all these people are transferring and stuff. Now that's a different story, but I find their coach extremely annoying for some reason. I don't know why. It reminds me of someone that I cannot pinpoint, but I'll eventually remember, and I'll be like, that's why I don't like this guy. But the only reason I enjoy the college boys men's playoffs is I can say playoffs and piss off Angie because Notre Dame didn't make the playoffs. That's really my only entertainment coming out of this. But I have probably said playoffs for approximately 100 times or so over anytime, even in NFL yesterday, anytime somebody said playoffs, I was automatically saying playoffs.
The classic Jim Moore playoffs. I think
he's a Colts fan too, so it just comes all together.
Oh, that's rough.
Until she admitted it yesterday. But
I do think if you're a fan of footy, the closest, at least, fan experience that we can get in this country that's similar to fan experiences of soccer overseas is college football. That's the only sport, and to some levels college basketball, depending on where you're at and which team or which college you're at, because the fan atmosphere is so much better than the professional games here specifically. So I feel like in that regard, I can see some overlap in enjoying that because of the fan atmosphere. That's the only reason I think that one of the reasons I think sometimes I enjoy seeing college football a little bit is just the fan atmosphere it's a lot rowdier than professional. Usually, obviously, when you get to the playoffs, I think it's a different beast. But casually throughout the year in any sport here in the States, fandom is not great.
I have not been to a game, like, just from TV though. Yes, I think it looks the closest in terms of one, craziness, two, how much people are actually into the game as opposed to
The
each other
entertainment,
or food, or you know what I mean,
the
or
kiss cam. Yeah.
Yes, or that. But is it just me that I find, especially when you're watching college football, or basketball, doesn't matter, I guess. But like you see, like, it's college, and I know it's become semi-pro. This is a typical Monday fashion. We went all over the place, and I realize it's semi-pro. Am I the only one who finds it really cringy and creepy to have two like guys my age celebrate in between bunch of college kids and like celebrate like out of control, like this is the best thing that has ever happened to him? I realize that they might be alumni, or they might just be, into it or whatever. When I look at it, it looks to me always very cringy, seeing like 3-4 old guys and then just like a bunch of kids around them and stuff.
I don't know. Klopp was jumping around with a bunch of 16 and 17-year-olds after winning the cup. So
I mean, the same thing. That's part of the ordeal. That makes zero sense. That's a horrible analogy. Hey, I know you're trying to bring it back to Liverpool or something, but that was horrible.
I'm not Gordo. I'm not paid enough to come up with good analogies here.
Well, that's like a college girlfriend that never went away or something. That's about a Gordo.
I think the thing there is maybe it's more so at that level what you're coaching. You're not coaching necessarily the most skilled athletes in the world. Like once you get professionally, right, you're coaching the most skilled athletes in the entire world at those specific positions.
Mm-hmm.
At the college level, you're trying to make the best happen with what you have. And I think that's, a bit more admirable, commendable, right? Depending, but so I don't know if I'm totally on your train there.
No, see, I would buy that. Paul is a big college guy, so I knew like it was like freaking the Batman sign. He just freaking showed up. You never see Paul on a Monday morning, and you see Paul. But I would buy that 5 years ago. Now, if you don't have enough on your team, you go to the guy who went to Ohio State to start and say, "You're not starting over there. Why don't you hit the portal?" And you bring him over. 10 years ago, I would have bought that story and be like, "Oh, that's adorable." Now, not really. It's just pro. Let's face it.
You still need chemistry. You still need to have teammates that trust you.
I'm not saying it's easy to coach or anything. I'm just saying that whole thing of developing young men, getting them graduated and stuff has gone out the door. Like he came here for the education. 6 months later, he went there for the education. Another year later, now he's over here for the education.
They're not saying it's for the education anymore, but I think we are, and this is a completely different conversation we have. We have failed to actually compensate college athletes for a while. So I think we're in a
once we get into that, we'll be here for
a more rewarding situation for them that they deserve. That's all.
Yeah, they should have gotten paid somehow. I just feel bad for the lineman who's probably not getting shits, even though he's doing the same thing. I mean, he's getting, but not as much, But I guess that's the same as mostly in real life pro sports too. Okay, let's get to the main topic. I don't know why. Aren't you in a good mood from what you've seen? I know the game is later today, obviously. In like 6 hours over here?
Yeah.
Not even.
5.
Yeah. So, and Slot hinted that it would be not mostly maybe, but a pretty strong side and not kids. So let's start with that. Are you cool with that?
That's why I'm not as excited.
Really?
This team is already so thin that putting out a stronger lineup, while on paper does make sense, because this is, I think, out of the 3 competitions that this club is in, this is probably going to be the easiest path for some silverware at the end of the year at this point with the clubs that have dropped out. The risks that you're taking is, let's say you start Van Dijk, or you start Gomez right after him coming back from being hurt. You start a semi-strong lineup, any one of those guys go down, and it's going to be the same BS over and over. Well, they shouldn't have played. It's against Barnsley, blah, blah, blah. And if they do put out a strong lineup and they don't play well, that's going to even be a worse conversation. But you can't just throw kids out there with Chiesa and Rio and hope for the best, because we kind of saw what happened against Plymouth last year when that happened. So unless this is like a 4-5-0 spanking with no injuries, I truly don't see a positive narrative being spun out of this match, which is such a sad state to be in as a fan of this club, is expecting just the nonsense that will come from other fans of this club, regardless of what's going to happen. So that's why I'm not as excited. We had people upset and pissed off after the Arsenal match because it ended 0-0. They get a shot on target. While everything that Slot wanted them to do, they did well. They did exactly what he wanted. He wanted to absorb the pressure in the first half, and in the second half, go on the front foot and try and create. That's exactly what happened. And you leave the Emirates with a point, which is more than what we could have asked for going into that match. So I just don't expect a lot of level-headedness coming from a bunch of fans of this club.
I agree with this. Like, I thought about that, but we've said it over here. I mean, we said it Monday night. We said it with you because you're a basketball guy. So I know we made this analogy that sometimes you just need to see it go in a few times before, to get your confidence. But regardless of who it's against or what the situation and stuff, you just need to see a couple of shots going. I just feel like in that sense, it's a good way to almost like treat this as a scrimmage. And about open, because what Barnsley is going to do. They're going to sit back, right? And they're going to try to do set pieces and stuff. So it's a good way to kind of try to break open a defense. If you could bring a scout team, if you will, and treat it as that, where we're having difficulty breaking down a low block, bring him over. Let's play against them. And then if you are able to, ideally, in a way to get get him to score, then you can get, Gakpo on the goal sheets, maybe Wirtz. I don't know who's going to play out of his strong lineup and stuff, but I feel like that would give them some momentum heading into the next game, where you're going to face Burnley, who's going to do the same thing, obviously in a much higher level. I guess that's the way I'm looking at it, and I'm okay with it. And I really, I really think the young people he's talking about is probably Ramsey, Rio and stuff. If you're going to put those guys in, but your core, because the problem from Thursday, like what you said in the second half, we still did not create. Actually, Slot said, which I was going to ask you about that, so good thing you brought that out. Slot said that he was shocked at the press conference that everybody was so hyper and excited about the performance, because he felt like it was very similar to all the other performances, but the issue still there is they can't create chances. Do you think it's only because it's Arsenal? It's the same result. It's a draw that people were banging their head on the wall with. Is it because away Emirates? Is it because it's Arsenal? Is it because people expected the worst, so they're pleasantly surprised? Or why is that this one against Arsenal is seen much better than, I don't know, another 0-0 away or 2-2 away?
Guess where I'm headed with this one?
Oh, a little bit
of both. I think you have to recognize that it has to be both the opposition and both the several last weeks of form that go into it. Because when you, on paper, going into that match, a lot of us expected a lot worse. A lot of us just kind of wanted to maybe fast forward through the day and just go into the next day just to get it over with. But I think you mentioned it, I think it was on one of the Monday shows, if I do recall, that you had seen somewhere that some fans were saying, well, watch the players play well against Arsenal and then drop their performance against Barnsley, whatever the case, right? And you had made the comment, well, isn't that then on the players rather than the manager, right? And so that's the difficult question that some of these fans need to answer is you can't be on both sides of that, where you say the players play poorly because of Slot, but the players play well because of themselves. That doesn't make sense. It has to be one or the other. So I think, going back to the question, it has to do with the fact that I think a lot of fans and pundits didn't expect much from this team. You look up top, there's no Isak, no Ekitike, no Mo. There really isn't a finisher outside of Gakpo but he doesn't play that central nine that you kind of needed for that game. So I'm not surprised by what Slot said. I feel like he probably feels like that was a very similar performance to what they've had. They've just been a little bit more unlucky, or they've had, some shots go in both against them and for them that may have otherwise not gone in at times before.
I think that's the problem, is everybody looks at it as, I mean, I'm in this chats where there's like 2-3 guys who are basically just dying to get rid of Slots, and everything has to be like in a negative light. When things are going well, like it's like crickets in there. When things are bad, it's, like, oh, they're like all raving on it. On a game like that where it felt like mostly positive, I'm trying to pull it up now. There were some takes on, oh, that's because players stop listening to his directions and stuff. Like, just it's like anything not to give credit or anything to find ways to criticize. I thought overall it was probably more of the same, but at the same time, yes, the issue is still there, that he admits that you are not creating chances against a team that's defending. In the Arsenal game, I felt differently, maybe because it was Arsenal. Not a lot. Did they finally concede a goal in the Champions League in the last game? Because they had not even conceded a goal in the Champions League, like going into the last week, I thought. Last set of matches, sure, I should say. But so it's a good defense. So that was a bit more excusable in some sense, that you could not create. And going back to what you're saying, you don't have Isak, you don't have Ekitike, and like you felt the need for, especially in the first half, when we were like absorbed defending, it felt like there was no outlets because Gakpo had to come back to defense. You could see that he was basically shadowing Timber, and then Kirkes was going to be on Saka. So at times Gakpo was like, and Timber was getting inverted and going into the box. So Gakpo was like an extra center back, it looked like. So there was no outlets to go to, but they did absorb the pressure and they did not concede. And really, they only gave like one clear chance. Jason says it's up to the manager to allocate any complacency. I don't even know if it is complacency. Do you consider it complacency in terms of, I don't think it is complacency from the players' side where they are not performing. Probably more like because coming from confidence, and they know, is it a little bit of pride that kicked in a bit more in an Arsenal game compared to a Leeds game or Fulham game?
Maybe a little bit. I mean, you had Sobo's comments about Arsenal playing the champions, and they're not crowned champions yet, right? But I think the frustrating thing when you think about it in that sense is that wouldn't you have, isn't more pride on the line in, let's say, losing to a side like Forest 3-0 than just trying to get a decent result against Arsenal? I feel like that's a bigger hit on pride than trying to get a point against Arsenal. But I think the complacency part, I think that's fair to an extent because of what's available to the manager, right? And you look at someone like Konate, he doesn't have anyone to fight him for his spot, right? Even someone like Van Dijk, essentially right now, he has to play every single game. There really isn't any rotation going on there. There can be a little complacency because he's like, well, I've got to play every single game, right? I mean, my legs, I need my legs for 90 minutes. Two times a week, sometimes 3 times a week. Like, yeah, you might get a little bit complacent. So I think maybe there's that part, that element to it, because there isn't as much depth. I hate to say that, after spending $400 million, $500 million in the summer window, but there doesn't feel like there's enough depth to make some of these players, I think, maybe fight a little harder for some of their spots, even though, at this club, you shouldn't feel like it's handed to you anyway. But it does happen.
It does happen. And I know, like I say, if it wasn't for the injuries, even after the injuries, it felt like, and I keep going back to this, when we entered the season, none of us complained about that, especially when the Gahey thing was about to happen. When that didn't happen, we said, we're short on center backs because we can't rely on Gomez. It's just Leone, the young kid and stuff. And then well, that's true. You can't rely on Gomez, so he's like in and out, in and out, in and out, and then we had the Leone injury. I mean, right back, anybody who played right back constantly kept getting injured. Now Bradley is out for the season, so you definitely need to have some reinforcements come in because you don't have unless we'll talk about that, like if like the performances that might change their status on the team, kind of a deal. But I just don't know when we go back and say, oh, like the depth. I think it's just the circumstances that lead up to it that bring it out, as opposed to poor planning. The only thing is the depth that we thought we had in the beginning of the season was based on how we played last year and how we assume you would continue to play. The depth we have now doesn't really suit as much on how we're playing instead, because but here's the thing. I mean, I'll ask you that. Like, if he has Isak and Ekitike and stuff, I don't know if you're playing like 5-6 midfielders every game, so it looks like there's no midfielder left on the bench because they're all out there playing. So a lot of what we're doing now and the shortages is due to like circumstances they could not control. Isn't that fair to say? Because I don't think a lot of nobody complained before the season saying, "Oh, we're going really short," except center back when the Gahey thing fell through in the last second.
Yeah, I think because we talked about even last year being a center back short, right?
Yeah.
Without letting Kwanzaa go, and so that was a big thing. After Kwanzaa left, you felt like you needed that replacement for sure, and then still another one on top of what we had asked for the year before. But yeah, I think you're absolutely right because it is circumstantial. You wouldn't have to play your 4, sometimes 5 midfielders if you had fit strikers, right? I mean, in some ways, like depending on which striker is out there, you'd want to pair them with certain midfielders and certain wingers. We've talked about this before. Like you can't have a Gakpo, Isak, Mo front 3 because that's not a good defensive front 3, or they're not going to come back as much. It's not going to work. Whereas Ekitike can play more with Gakpo and Mo because Ekitike can come back. He does more of that dirty work defensively. Actually, can come back and challenge. So I think it's frustrating because I don't think if the season continues like this, where it's sort of just and Slot does lose his job, I don't think we will ever end up actually seeing what he wanted this club to play like, what he wanted his players to play like. You're muted.
And I don't know if we're going to see it this year. I guess that's like the only issue over there. Let's go back to what Scotty was saying. By the way, thanks for everybody joining us. If you're watching us live right now, hit that thumbs up. It really helps a lot. Brings other people in over there, like makes them aware of what the hell we're doing here in the morning. So please do hit that thumbs up. And then if you haven't subscribed, please do hit that subscribe and follow or whatever the button. What is the button? Is it follow or subscribe?
I don't know. It's just the bell, I think.
Oh, bell is the notification. Hit the bell as well, and then that way you know when we're going live. Hit everything except the thumbs down. Just press every single button over there. One of them has to be right. But the Fulham equalizer, that was still a poor performance. Do you appreciate Slot's honesty? You know what I don't appreciate? I feel like he's getting like extra defensive. Basically, I think part of it is due to some of the stupid questions being asked in the press conferences. By the way, don't get me on a rant on like stupid questions asked at press conferences, because I watched a bunch over the weekend. It's like a bunch of beach balls being thrown at the manager. There was like players and stuff. Just like basically the answer is in the question. Can you just say it so I have it on tape so I can like publish it kind of deal? But what do you make of that? I mean, in terms of like his overall constantly fighting the story, like constantly fighting the notion that okay, we're playing poorly, and he's constantly like going back and forth. To me, it feels like he's a lot more defensive than he was last year. I mean, obviously the results are not there, so it's maybe natural, but would you rather have him just sugarcoat it and go, as opposed to, because I think people who want Slot out then take those quotes and saying like, see, he's happy with this shit. He likes this stuff and all that. Whereas that's not what he's saying. It's a lot easier to take shit out of context when you keep saying defensive stuff.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, part of it is believing in what you're doing and what you're seeing on the pitch, because you're the one in charge of what's happening. And as a manager, you want to take credit, where credit is due, whether that's good or bad. And I think, he is not someone that is going to necessarily change his own narrative to fit whatever the media, whatever the pundits, whatever the reporters are asking, because he just wants to continue to answer for himself and how he sees the game and how he wants the players to play. So I don't, maybe it's just it's so difficult because we've been so used to hearing a certain voice for so long that now I think anything different, whether it was one way or the other, was just going to be different. And like you said, it's a lot more common to get defensive when the results aren't there than last year when it was just pretty much all smiles. Like, yeah, I mean, the only time there was a frown really was after losing to Forest and losing to PSG, and that was pretty much it. Otherwise, it was all happy, rainbows and sunshine and all that good stuff.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, what do you think people want to hear apart from like his resignation? So these slot out people, like, what do you think he could say that would put people at more like, oh, he knows we're not performing or something? Because obviously he does.
I don't know if for some of these people, I don't know if there's anything he could say that could.
That's fair.
That could let them have some ease about him. Maybe just straight up just sitting there and saying, look, I understand that these results aren't good, and I take full ownership of these poor results, and I promise that we're doing the best that we can every week to try and fix these results. I mean, what else is he supposed to say, right? Other than that.
True. So all this nonsense that we were left short of just made up jargon from the YouTube community. We think our club is run from their PlayStation 5 controls and FIFA career mode. And honestly, even then, you don't play anybody on the bench anyway. So what do they care? They got rid of even an Ultimate Team. They got rid of I blame EA Sports for this because you don't have to even rotate anymore. You can just have a squad that just goes out there. And for injuries, you just use a card. So he's not injured anymore. He comes back again. So mission accomplished. Why is this so difficult? I do it all the time. Just use the injury card on Bradley and he's back, kind of a deal. But Scotty says he owns press conferences. At times, I'll admit, I wonder if he tells the opponent too much. People have said that, like I remember like after the United game, he like dissected it and stuff. People are like, oh, he's saying too much. I honestly think that he's not telling the other team anything that they don't already know. It's like pretty darn obvious. You don't have to tell me something is salty, salty as hell. Because when I taste it, I know it's salty as hell. You know what I mean? Like these guys know, they freaking like manipulated the hell out of that after a match. So Slot saying it, I don't think makes a huge impact. I do like the honesty. And I think the problem is when you're listening as a neutral, and I think I'm one of the few left over here. I don't know if you're with me still that, the Slots in thing, because we're losing people rapidly on the American Scouser here. But, when you're listening to that, then it's cool because you understand it. If you're listening to it in a negative tone, that confidence looks like he doesn't care, or he's like, see, like, look, there's no fire and stuff. So you don't appreciate the calmness. You always like find things to attack.
Yeah, and we do that for anything in life. We do that for players that we like, right? Well, how many times have some of us made excuses for certain players and then criticize other players for doing the same thing? It just depends on who we like a little bit more that day, right? Like Kirkes can have a fantastic game, get burned twice by Saka, and he's called the worst left back in the country. But other people looking at it going, he did exactly what he needed to do, and Saka is a great winger, and he gets by every left back in the league sometimes. And you kind of just take that for what it is. So yeah, it's we all like to throw in the narrative that we want to hear, unfortunately, and some of us are better at being more objective than others. And sometimes you just don't have to get involved in those sort of conversations if you realize it's not going to be as objective as you would hope it to be.
Those are good instructions, but I know it rarely happens in terms of like how I follow those instructions. I know. Yeah, in terms of like Kirkes, for example, I mean, people were right off the bat saying like once he got beat once, he's like Robertson should have started, forgetting how Saka pretty much walked by Robertson last time we played him. I think that was the Emirates game, right? And he scored the goal. So it's not. I thought Kirkes had like a really good game, probably one of his best, really, in terms of Saka. And you saw Saka walking out. It was more, and you're probably right. If it was the other way around, like let's say if it's Van Dijk against another center forward, they'd be like, oh, he had it in his pocket and stuff. But because it's Kirkes, people are more like gonna look to criticize. We are like, this is probably the most divided I've seen the fan base in a long time. There's no common villain, right? Like there's no Lovren that everybody's going after. There's no Gomez everybody's going after. There's no Nunez everybody's going after. It just feels like people are just throwing darts and whoever it hits, they go after, except maybe one or two. One thing I will say from the Arsenal game, and the funny thing is, I said it 10 minutes in. We were watching it with Angel. I'm like, you know who skates under? It was Gravenberg because he made like an error. And I was like, yeah, he's not nobody. Like he's kind of like under the radar. Nobody talks about him. But then he bounced back from that mistake. And I thought he had one of his best games. And I still go back to that. I don't think people are looking at that spot a lot. We got a lot from Gravenberg last year that we are not this year.
Yeah. And I wonder if it's part of this systemic change that Slot wants to make of how they're playing. And it's sort of a different role, and it's not as cohesive as it was last year for Ryan to do what he is being asked to do, maybe. Because I think now in this setup, at least what we've roughly seen, this is the kind of setup where you prefer more of the Fabinho type of 6 than last year. Right. Last year it was still a different it was still a different setup of saying this is not the 6, the traditional 6 that we're used to seeing that we would want to see. I think now we're back to more of that traditional 6 that you'd like to see to sort of shore up that right in front of the back 4 there. Because we talked about it earlier, not earlier today, but like several weeks ago, all this time, that a lot of these players want to be forward and they want to end up in the opposition's box, right? Every single midfielder is a creative, get to the box kind of midfielder that wants to get a chance at goal. Every single winger obviously wants to be in the box. Every single striker wants to be in the box. You have Kirkes and now Frimpong and left and right backs there that are flying up the field to try and get to the box as well. So all you've got left is Van Dijk and Konate. So you need that triangle, if you will, of that 6 there to shore up those 3.
I think that's one thing that he's done. Like, you know, in terms of stop the bleeding, we were conceding constantly. I mean, you look at even the Fulham game. I mean, the world that he scored is how they basically got the equalizer and stuff. So it has been, you don't let Arsenal get a goal against you. So I think he's fixed the defensive concerns. But what I worry is when I watch this team, especially at home, that's why I'm going to be looking to see against Barnsley and then Burnley, is like we play a little, I kept saying this last week too, like we just play a little scared of going at people, worried that we're going to leave space behind. Probably could be partially to what you're saying, where you have these midfielders that are looking to make the runs. But that's like when they got to communicate, or I felt we had like a really good balance last year where Gravenberg would push up, McAllister would drop, like seeing each other, they would drop. I don't know if it's the frustration of not creating, because in some ways it makes it difficult to defend because any of those midfielders can make a run through and you don't think, oh, Grav is a 6, so he's not coming. All I got to do is keep an eye on these 2 guys right here. So, but there has to be a balance to that. Like they have to know, we have to know who's going into the box and who's going to be the safety in that situation, and that can kind of change throughout the game. But I feel like we don't have that balance that we did last year. I know Gally and Bickler were talking a lot about like McAllister's role changing with Wirtz, and he doesn't look happy about it and stuff. I don't know if we're reading too much into it, but I do notice that he does not control the pace as much as he used to. Whereas, you know, it always went through him. Or maybe now when the ball gets to Wirtz, it feels like Wirtz gets bored and he goes to attack mode and he's the only one actually taking risks. Then, you know, that takes away from McAllister in terms of like setting the pace. Like, nope, not now. We weren't supposed to go now kind of a deal. I really feel like the biggest issue I see is we're not taking any chances. There's like too much value given to let's keep possession at times. You see so many freaking runs throughout the game. so many runs being made, and nobody is even looking for him at times.
Right.
And it's not even like, oh, we use that run and then we go this way. No, like we just still passing around, and people making constant sprints from midfield. Like you're saying, when Ikitika was there, he would make those runs. Veert's making those runs. Nobody's taking the chance to see if they can get the ball there behind the line and stuff. And when you're not threatening a defense behind, I mean, it's very easy to defend when everything is in front of you. Dude, so that New Year's resolution went down the drain in a hurry. It's the freaking 12th, for God's sakes, man. So you did not last 12 days. You probably bet over the weekend too, so this can't be the first one. But Rio to get a goal and assist. Let's get to that. Rio is probably an obvious answer. But like guys like Ramsey, I don't know, like are there any names that you're like, hey, if they perform today, it can change how we approach the transfer markets in January? Is there anybody who can perform like that today to change our plans?
I don't think there is. Because Ramsey's the only one that could fill a need right now, especially with Bradley going down for the rest of the year. Man, because I can't think of any other. Neoni's Neoni. Who would even play up top? Will Wright? I don't know. So it's. I don't think there really is. I'm trying to think.
Like, will we go Monday night tonight, hoping that we get a good result, decent performance, good results? It's going to be not a pretty game to watch just because that doesn't suit Barnsley, so it's not going to be a fun game to watch in that sense.
And anytime you have a mixture of players that typically don't play together, it always looks sloppy.
Exactly.
So,
but is there anybody tonight you can be like, see, he should play more? Or are we automatically going to say, hey, it's against freaking Barnsley, obviously he's going to play well, and we're going to move on? It feels like that's like a lose-lose tonight for everybody. Because even if we win big,
that's what I said at the beginning. I don't think there's any good narrative that's going to come from this game, no matter what, unless it's 5-0 and no one gets hurt.
Okay, that's the only narrative. 5-0, you think it will become a good narrative? Because I'm going to be like, yeah, it's against Barnsley is what's going to come. Is there a scenario where people will be like, damn, here we go. Here we come. Bring on Burnley.
No, probably not. maybe if it's like a Man City 10-1 that they just had, maybe then. But yeah, I think because the difficult thing is that any player that plays really well isn't going to take the spot of any player that's already in the usual 11. I just don't see a world where a rotational guy will then start fighting for spot A, B, C over guys that are already in the starting 11. I don't know. I just don't see it. I don't see it.
I probably don't see it either, to be honest with you. I don't know. Ramsey, I think it's a good opportunity for him. For Rio, he keeps talking about Rio and like all the criticism that he's getting in terms of, not getting as many minutes and stuff. And he was talking about like managing them. He's not practicing every single day because he was talking about Dan's, and he was talking about like Dan's injuries. And it's almost like he gave it to over practicing and over like straining a growing body kind of an ordeal. So they're trying. That's why he said that's why we're so careful with Rio. And I don't think people understand that in terms of. Having said that, though, I get that point, right? But at the same time, you look around the world and there's so many like 17, 18, 19-year-olds playing day in and day out and very effective for their team. Is it just because the Premier League is the difference? Because I don't know if you see as many in the Premier League. Am I missing something? Can you think of a teenager lighting it up week in and week out in the Premier League? I can't. I can in like Germany and Spain and stuff, for example.
Yeah, maybe it is the intensity of the league. Who knows? Because you've got Lamine Yamal, right, over in Spain. In Germany, you've got Karl, like Leonard Karl, right? He was just starting to tear it up in Bundesliga as well. So maybe it is the intensity of the league, or maybe there's just less trust in teenagers in the league as a whole, right? Because I feel like sometimes the sport and maybe leagues specifically go through this period of how they play. Like we went through the phase of a lot of build up from the back, and then every team goes into tiki-taka, and then every team goes into possession base, and every team goes into XYZ. So I think maybe where we're at as a league and a sport sort of defines what you do as a club. And in this particular time in the Prem, the strategy isn't to use the teenagers. I don't know. I really don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, I mean, Red's. Oh, hold on. Red Rebellion says Klopp never started. Where's Bob when you need him? Because Bob over here would argue that he has, which he has not. I think that's part of the ordeal. Yes, and honestly, that was something that, I mean, I criticize in terms of, instead of sprinkling them, what we like to do, you were talking about it earlier, you put a bunch of people who have not played together, like you give them like 4 adults and a bunch of kids. And I know we won that final and stuff, but more often than not, we got knocked out of the League Cup and FA Cup early during the Klopp era, mainly because of that, because we would just throw out a makeshift lineup and they would be like playing there. So, and you could see the disconnect and stuff defensively, attacking wise, and we would get eliminated regardless. But did Klopp ever have a 17-year-old as talented as Rio? The world might never know, because if he did, he would not play him regularly. Like, some of those guys that we saw then that won the final. And this is always like, really risky too, right? Like when we have these players who are young, and you see them one game and you're like, oh, he's a world beater. The trick is to be able to do it week in and week out. Physically, mentally, it's not as easy as it looks. And that's why you got to handle these kids every one guy that makes it, there's like 99 kids who had like a spark in a game and stuff, and you never heard from again. That's why when they, the Polish, where is your boy, Polish Messi, for example?
He's in France somewhere.
You know what I mean? Like, there's so many players like that. I just brought that up because he's Polish.
I think if Rio hadn't scored the winner against Newcastle, I don't think fans would be talking about him as much as they are now. I think they're going back to that moment thinking, well, he can make an impact on the game. And obviously he can. But having that impact in the last 4 or 5 minutes and being in the right position there is a lot different than impacting the game on a more consistent and bigger and longer level, right? So I don't know. That's it for me.
Says Trent was 18. By the way, hey, thanks a lot for everyone. We have about like 20 live viewers right now, but we only have 4 thumbs up. I'm no math whiz, but need your guys' help. Hit that thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed, definitely subscribe. But Trent was 18 when he broke out. Klopp completely trusted him despite his defensive mistakes. I will actually, there's a typo in there. I think, thought he would eventually grow out of those defensive mistakes, but then we realized no, because he was a midfielder playing right back. It was like being converted to a right back, and I think we all thought, he was going to kind of eventually over time, because we were like, he's so young, he would grow out of those. But where are they now? I think he's injured again. He did come back, I saw, but then he wasn't in the final they played in Saudi. How important is FA Cup? Normally the club, even if you win, but being out of the title race. Yeah, I think it goes back to what you're saying, right? It's a trophy you can win, realistically. And actually pretty darn realistically based on who's available.
Yes. And I don't ever think I would go as far to say it's useless for a top club. I definitely don't think there's as much merit to it as there used to be, right? We don't romanticize it as much as we used to romanticize it. But at the end of the day, it is still a piece of piece of silverware. So I think you can always look at something like that in a positive light, right? I mean, even if it is a top club and not a club like Palace winning it, right? Or a club like Leicester winning, or whatever the case might be, right? I mean, there's still something to hang on to, because we think back to the year that we almost won the double, with the League Cup and the FA Cup, and how those trophies were celebrated at the time, right? They're really celebrated. And unfortunately, when you look back, you really wish you would have traded those 2 for the other 2, but you still have those moments, those cup winning moments, right? I mean, you have Costas, scoring the pen and celebrating. It's
I
one
knew
of
that
those
was going
things
to be
where,
brought up. He won
yeah,
us the FA Cup.
yes,
I
I
know.
needed to bring it up.
cold.
So it's one of those things where you can still think back and you could be that season go, well, the season was kind of a shit show, but hey, at least we won the FA Cup, right? I mean, so I think there's always a little bit of something on the line there.
Scotty says it's useless because it doesn't save a manager's job, which I do agree, because there have been a lot of managers.
It saved Ten Hag's job.
True. Well, that is United, so I don't know if you can't take that as like I move on from it. Take it.
Everyone won because Ten Hag stayed in charge, and it allowed teams to continue playing well against Man United. So I think it was a win for everyone.
It was a win for everyone. It disagrees. I can't wait for. Hopefully, we win today, so there's no disaster. But I can't wait for Rival Bros, because he was really cursing up a storm during the game yesterday where they lost to Brighton. So I can't wait to see him. He was like, "This is the worst run club in the world" and stuff. So I was like smirking just seeing his text on WhatsApp over there. But I don't think it would save a job. But I do agree with you. When you win these trophies and stuff, it is almost like a building block. Especially this ends up being a rebuilding season. I think it ends up being something that you can be like, hey, we can do this together. Now we're gonna do more together. Like when we won our first trophy, it was like, this is one, and then we keep going. I think psychologically it's a huge thing, and I don't think the club is thinking of removing slots anyway. I know there's like a lot of rumors about the rift, about like Rio and other things and stuff like that, but I don't think the club is thinking about moving slot, and this kind of gives them something to build on. Does it establish slots a bit more, where he becomes this guy who wins silverware every season? I know the people who are slot outs, extremes, will never come back to the other side, regardless if he wins. Unless he wins the Champions League, I don't think they're coming to the other side. But what do you think it would do for slots and the project overall?
It would have to be looked at positively, because at least because the problem is going to be, though, that no matter what, even if this team goes on to win the FA Cup, but they get knocked out of Champions League, and then they finish, I don't know, let's say fourth. Everyone who's already slot out is going to say, well, I mean, it's the FA Cup. It doesn't really count. Doesn't really matter. He should have performed better in the more distinguished competitions, and in the more prestigious competitions is what should have happened. So I think some of us will look at it positively and go, at least there's some silverware there. But I don't think it's going to necessarily help change anyone's thoughts on slot. I think we're at the point now, no matter what happens, unless there is a miraculous turnaround and this team ends up coming back to win the league and then maybe make it to the Champions League final and win the FA Cup, where the slot outers will change their mind. I don't think there's a world where that's going to change at this point.
Yeah, unfortunately, I did predict us to win the Champions League, so there's that. It would end all speculation over here, because I do think we start putting it together right when it matters, similar to what PSG did last year. Like, things are coming together and the momentum is kicking in, and that's why part of me says these games are pretty darn important now to get, even if it's a single point, so that you can establish your top 4, top 5 to go to the Champions League the next year. So maybe towards the end of the season, you rotate with that in mind, like the Champions League game coming up midweek in mind. You determine your weekend lineup accordingly and stuff. Whereas usually it has been the other way around. Here's a good question, because I've been asked this before. At what stage would you guys be slot out? The only reason I'm getting close is not because of slot, unfortunately. It's because of the fan base, because it's becoming a no-win situation. But that's on the fans. That's not really on slot. So I don't know where to be on that. But sadly, it's the nature of the business. Doesn't matter whose fault it is. You can't fire the fans for creating this environment, so you have to fire the manager. Where are you at with that? When would you be? Because I know we talked about this maybe like 2 months ago or so.
Yeah,
but a lot has changed since then.
I think the plus side to the fans is that I don't think at Anfield, in a way, that he gets criticized as much as he gets criticized online, right? I feel like the fans that are going to the games aren't as slot out as we see across these Facebook groups and whatnot. So I think I would give him until at least the end of the year. I think that's a given. He won the Premier League last year. He deserves to at least stay until the end of the year. There have been a rough stretch of injuries that he's had to work through, right? Let's see, Isak, Ekitike, Leone, 3 signings from this year that have been on and off healthy. Isak's barely been able to play. Leone played once. Ekitike, you can't play him too much quite yet. I mean, he needs a bit more rotation. The only guys you have are Wirtz and Kirkes. So the only downside, or in Frimpong. So the only thing that frustrates me is that we're not seeing the vision that he laid out for Wirtz in the summer that we had all talked about. He had this great pitch to Wirtz to show him, what he expects this club to look like, how he's going to play, and we just maybe haven't seen that much of it yet. But does that come down to the personnel that's available to him, and have the injuries then made it much more difficult to play in that way? So I feel like as fans, we owe it to him to see it through for the rest of the year, because this year that we're having this year should have been last year. This should have been the rebuilding year. And unfortunately now, because of the success of last year, it's making things a lot more tense this year. Because if we went through this last year, no one would be saying slot out. I guarantee, maybe not no one, but I'd say maybe 10% of the fan base would be like, you know what? New manager, new things. You have to go through growing pains. But because they overachieved, now you're in this situation where anything that isn't the same achievement is disappointment and seen as merit to get sacked.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually. Nobody would have said this last year. And I think, he's maybe you have that season where you run away with it. Then you have the summer that you have with the quality you're bringing in. And the expectation was like us to just take off. But I think here's a couple of things. Let's go with this first. Steven Keel about forming opinions. Ooh, I don't know what that means.
I don't either.
Can't be good. It's upside down. But if this were to not, I mean, a lot of it is social media, and a lot of it is because negative voices are always louder. Because I don't go away. I mean, I don't know. I'm kind of like sick of the fight. I kind of like, I have this outlet, so I say myself to this outlet. Even in Discord, I haven't gotten into discussions about this anymore because I'll just come over here and say my piece and go on, because I'm not going to go one by one. Even in that WhatsApp chat, I was like, you know what? The hell with you guys. Like, you guys do you, and then maybe I'll come at the end and go like, if we win something, and then just like walk out. That's my only thing I'm going to do, because the social media, the negative voices are always louder. So I don't think you would have this in the 90s, because I think the mindset would be different. I blame Mateusz's generation for part of it, where it's like instant gratification. Everything has to happen right away. Why is this taking so damn long? Or maybe FIFA really taking over. I don't know which one to do.
A little bit of both.
A little bit of both. There you go. That's the thing I've heard. Very unhappy with the speed of football. And then Sparky, a long time no see, says, I just don't know what the system is, and the players don't know either. See, I don't know what you think about this. To me, this is not a lot slower than last year. The only difference I see is at times we're scared to go on the counter. We kind of control it too much. But it's not a lot slower than last year. Go back and watch the games from last year. When we're up 2-0, we're just passing it around. We were like, boring the other team to death, sometimes boring us to death. But we didn't give a damn because we were winning and we were racking up 3 points. I don't think the style has changed too radically. You just don't have a guy like Diaz, who sometimes played out of the system and did his own thing, and it looked crazy. And then Nunes was running around like a maniac at times when he came off the bench and stuff. But overall, I don't think it has changed a lot. The only thing that has changed is the results, which brings out, maybe if you were not originally too happy with it, now the result is not there either, so there's no reason to stick with it.
Yeah, 100%. And part of that maybe is also, it is on slot, right? If after a year you have other managers and other clubs, then they will be able to play against you a different way because they'll understand how you play and work a way around that. So it's up to you to then try and create different approach to each game to try and make the best of that. Because once you get found out and you get played against the same way, unless you find out a new way to play, it's going to be found out really easily.
It is a question. Let's leave with that, I guess, and then we'll do a score prediction as well. But Red Rebellion has been talking about in the chats regarding, the homegrown players. It's not like we can go out and sign like foreign non-homegrown players right now unless we're making room for them. My only thing is, if you do not consider Chiesa an option, if you not consider Endo an option, why hang on to him now? Especially, you have an opportunity for these players. In the past, for example, you wanted to get rid of Ox, but he loved his wages and he wouldn't go anywhere. I feel like guys like Endo and Chiesa and stuff have an incentive as they approach a World Cup to be getting playing minutes and playing regularly. So they will be up for a move. There will definitely be teams interested in them. I know we've heard a lot about it, like Juventus and Chiesa and stuff. Why not move those players? If they're not an option, there's no point in like heating a seat with their butts if you're never going to go in or trust them. Mind you, I know I'm asking for even more changes while we're dealing with the ones we did, but might as well break all the eggs and make one big ass omelet for everyone.
It's a lot of eggs.
I guess a lot of omelets.
A lot of eggs. No, a lot of eggs, a few omelets. So I think, I suppose the downside of that is the powers that be at FSG, they go into the market looking for not just to spend on whoever they can, right? They will spend on the players they believe in that have the value that they believe in as well, right? They don't believe in overpaying. They don't believe in just signing for the sake of signing. So I think the only thing there is that if you sell Endo and Chiesa, there may not be opportunities in the market to go and replace these guys in January with the guys available. And then you make yourself even more shorthanded than where you're at now. Because at least now there's still two bodies that can be used, albeit Endo is still hurt, I believe. And, Chiesa will not get as many minutes as he would hope to get. So I think it all comes down on what's available in the market. If there were players that the FSG believed are good value to bring in and will actually get used, then they would. But I think that's just where we're at this window, is that there aren't players that this organization believes are valuable enough to bring in for the amount that they're willing to pay. And also goes down to the registration numbers. I think it's been going back and forth in the comment section about stuff like that, where you have to pay attention to that as well. And so there's a lot of different things that are happening at once, and January isn't really a great time for good purchase. How many times has a January purchase worked out really well outside of Van Dijk for this club?
That's fair, but I guess, so this is saying, like, Mateusz, I'd hear if Chiesa was ever used. My thing is, if you're never going to use them, you just have bodies, you don't have depth. And that's the issue we run into now. I mean, it's great. It's like, there's guys on the bench, but if they're never going to come in or you don't trust them, look at the Arsenal game. Like, they kept sending in subs. I mean, we're like, nope, we're good, because there's nobody on the. And, Angel was like, oh, how come he's not making any subs? And I look at the bench and I'm like, because really, I only see one or two guys that can come into a game against Arsenal where we don't see a huge drop off or something like that. So, and that creates the homegrown, non-homegrown spots if you move on from Chiesa, Endo, and stuff. This is a good point, though. This is the reverse side, right? Where it might be difficult to bring the guys in a World Cup year if they're starting regularly on their team and they're kind of coming into an unknown over here. So that's a good point. I mean, that kind of does make this January a lot trickier. I think it's easier to get guys who are not getting more minutes, but nobody coming to Liverpool. I mean, there are only like a few players that you're not going to be able to sign in January who can come to Liverpool and be guaranteed a starting spot, guaranteed minutes and stuff like that. So it is kind of like a tricky one. Red Rebellion says he's not ready for regular football. When is he ever going to be ready, man? That's, I guess, my question.
This goes back to the thing that we always talk about, like, especially on this show. Like, it's so easy for fans of a club like this to say, well, why wouldn't this guy want to come and play for this team?
Yeah.
Well, because if he's not going to get regular minutes and he has to sit behind Van Dijk, or he has to sit behind Wirtz. He has to sit behind name whoever guy here. And instead of that, he can go and play for club X and get 90 minutes a game. A lot of players are going to take that opportunity to play more regularly. It's not as simple as, well, this is a big club, they should want to play here. It's not that easy. It's never that easy. You always bring up your little case study of, if it was my son, would I want him to go play, sit on the bench for 3 years, or would I want him to go to a club like Brighton or Brentford, right, and have him play regularly? It's tough, because as much as we are fans of this club, we have to recognize that not every person in the world is also a fan of this club. Not everyone wants to go to Liverpool to play. You can't just expect that because someone will be offered money to play at the club that they're going to want to play at the club. It's not that simple.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's why Red Rebellion thing comes into play, especially in the World Cup year. If they're not guaranteed a spot, and they're going to get less minutes, because most likely they are a starter in their current club right now. So they're not going to want to give that up to see what happens over here. That's the only issue, I think, too. In the past, when we brought in players, for example, when you brought in Diaz, right? When you brought in Gakpo, it was very clear cut the needs and what they were going to do coming in right away. I think, going back to what Sparky is saying, he will not, like, there are not a lot of players. I mean, like Sparky just wrote, is a person, for example, he can come in and say, I got my spots ready to roll, and he will play. But there are not a lot of players who will be able to come in and say, we don't even know what's, it's going to end up being when all these injuries are done, which injuries are never done. But if you got the bigger pieces back, like Isak and stuff, I think that's a huge unknown to players when they evaluate a destination too. So, but having said that, Deludus says we're winning the FA Cup. That's fine, man. You book that. I'll book the Champions League. We'll win double trophy, and there will still be people saying slot out. So, okay, prediction time.
2-0.
2-0. Okay. I'm gonna go with a 4-1, which is scary because whenever I make predictions like this, it backfires. But let's do that. Let's go with 4-1 just for shits and giggles. And hopefully with a lot of positives to take away from it. I guess
you mean Liverpool, right? Not Barnsley.
Yes. Scotty says 5-0. Okay. Well, do I see a 6? No. Let's see. Like I say, the bigger scores we end up predicting, the worse the result ends up being. So it's Monday. Normally it's a grooming day, but you only have like 3-4 hours to get groomed. What's the game plan over there?
No grooming.
No grooming whatsoever. Just waiting for the game.
But there is the kids have to be coached at 3:00. So I am going to just watch the first half and then cut off all contact, come back to watch the second half. Unless it's already done after the first 45, then I'll just check the score on the phone after practice. So
yeah, you and practicing. I gotta come to one of these practices and see the Polish Prince in action. I do.
You don't
bring it to the Monday show. Some footage from. Are there people over there saying like Mateusz out? Hashtag Mateusz out in the high school forums or what?
Probably. I don't know. We're 2-10, so maybe.
Ooh, yikes.
The entire program is rough.
I don't know why they brought a Polish guy to coach. Who knows? Polish don't know basketball.
Damn foreigners.
Yeah, where are these forums so I can go over there and create an account and just like start some rebellion over there?
I'll send you the link.
But hey, thanks a lot, everybody, for jumping in. We are up and thumbs up too. So thank you so much for that. If you have not subscribed, please do so. I will be back tonight with again 7:00 Central, 8:00 Eastern. So do tune in for that. We'll talk a lot about the game. Hopefully good things. Hopefully the 4-1, 5-0, 4-0, but hopefully something good. But have a great week, everyone. And we'll see you guys tonight. Take care.